The winter of 1944 was honestly one of the coldest on record across Europe. But for millions of civilians, the freezing temperatures were only half the battle. With coal supplies diverted to the front lines and power grids decimated by strategic bombing, staying warm wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was a desperate struggle for survival. While the history books focus on the movements of divisions and the thunder of artillery, a silent war was being fought in the kitchens and basements of London, Berlin and Warsaw. Families had to become engineers of necessity, turning literal trash into life-saving thermal energy. Today we're going to strip away the modern veneer of central heating and look at the raw, ingenious methods our ancestors used to cheat the frost. Before we dive into these forgotten engineering marvels, make sure to subscribe to Atten Recounts so you never miss these deep dives into the hidden logistics of history. These techniques are more than just historical curiosities. They represent a fundamental understanding of thermodynamics that, honestly, most modern people have completely lost. By the end of this guide, you'll understand exactly how a family could keep a room habitable using nothing but a handful of scrap metal and household waste. The humble flowerpot heater served as a masterpiece of radiant heat displacement. One of the most effective ways families managed to maintain a warm zone in a single room was through the construction of terracotta radiant heaters. While many people today see these as a viral internet hack, during the Second World War they were a standard survival tactic for those with limited fuel. The science relies on the thermal mass of the clay. A standard terracotta pot is porous and dense, meaning it absorbs heat slowly but holds it for a significantly long time. By nesting a smaller pot inside a larger one and inverting them over a small heat source like a candle or a small oil wick, you create a convection chamber. The air between the two pots traps the rising heat, warming the inner core until it begins to radiate infrared energy outward. This doesn't just heat the air, which escapes through drafty wartime windows, but heats the objects and people in the room directly. To apply this today or understand its wartime application, one would need two unglazed terracotta pots of slightly different sizes and a long bolt with several washers. You would pass the bolt through the drainage holes of both pots, using the washers to create a gap of about an inch between the two layers of clay. When placed over a heat source, the inner pot reaches a high temperature quickly, while the outer pot acts as a radiator. During the Blitz, families would huddle around these in Morrison shelters, using the thermal mass to keep their hands and feet from going numb. It was a localized solution that recognized it was impossible to heat a whole house, so they focused all energy on a 3-foot radius around the occupants. Salvaged tin cans were transformed into high-efficiency hobo stoves for indoor use. When coal rations ran dry, the hobo stove or buddy burner became the primary method for both cooking and localized heating. These were often fashioned from large biscuit tins or discarded fruit cans. The ingenuity lay in the ventilation. By punching specific holes at the bottom for intake and smaller holes at the top for exhaust, civilians created a chimney effect that allowed scrap wood, paper, or even dried organic waste to burn at much higher temperatures than an open flame. This forced combustion meant less smoke and more concentrated heat. In many occupied cities, where even floorboards were being ripped up for fuel, the efficiency of the burner meant the difference between a fire that lasted 10 minutes and one that lasted an hour. Practical application involved more than just lighting a fire in a tin. Survivalists of the era would often fill a small tuna-sized can with rolled corrugated cardboard and pour melted wax or even rendered animal fat over it. This created a long-burning candle that served as the fuel source for the larger tin can heater. To replicate this, you would take a gallon-sized tin, remove the top and vent the bottom edges. By placing the cardboard and wax burner inside, the tin becomes a radiant heater that can also support a small pot of water. This setup was small enough to be used near a window for ventilation, but powerful enough to raise the temperature of a small insulated corner of a basement significantly. Thermal layering with newspaper and scrap fabric replaced the need for heavy wool. We often forget that heat retention is just as vital as heat production. During the war, textiles were heavily rationed, and wool was prioritized for military uniforms. Civilians turned to the poor man's insulation, newspaper. The concept of trapped air as an insulator is a basic principle of physics, but it was, perfected out of necessity in the 1940s. People would sew paper quilts by sandwiching layers of crumpled newsprint between two thin sheets or even old rags. The crumpled paper created thousands of tiny air pockets that prevented body heat from escaping. It was crinkly and loud, but it was often warmer than the thin synthetic blankets we use today. For those looking to understand the practical side of this, it involves layering. If you were stuck in a cold environment, the goal is to stop the movement of air next to your skin. Soldiers and civilians alike would wrap their torsos in several layers of flat newsprint before putting on their coats. In a home setting, they would tape newspaper over every window pane. This didn't just help with the blackout regulations, it created a secondary thermal barrier that slowed the transfer of heat through the glass. They would also draft-proof doors using snakes made from old stockings stuffed with sawdust or sand, ensuring that every BTU of heat generated by their scrap heaters stayed inside the living space. The chemical reaction of vinegar and rust provided a portable source of warmth. In some of the most extreme cases, especially for those in hiding or in transit, chemical heaters were fashioned from basic household chemistry. While not a permanent solution for a home, the reaction between iron and oxygen can be accelerated to produce heat. By mixing iron filings, often gathered from machine shop floors or by scraping rusted metal, with a mild acid like vinegar and salt, a slow oxidation process begins. This reaction is exothermic, meaning it releases heat as a byproduct. While it seems like a modern hand warmer, the principle was well understood by those who had to keep their joints moving in sub-zero trenches or unheated rail cars. A practical example of this involves creating a heat pack using a sturdy cloth pouch. By filling the pouch with a mixture of iron shavings and a small amount of salt and then dampening it with vinegar, the oxidation process triggers. The heat produced can last for several hours. During the war, this was a way to provide a hot water bottle effect without actually needing the precious fuel required to boil water. It was a silent, flameless and portable way to prevent frostbite. It serves as a reminder that the people of that era were not just survivors. They were intuitive scientists who looked at a pile of scrap metal and saw a source of life-sustaining energy. These stories of wartime ingenuity remind us that resilience is built on knowledge and the ability to see value where others see waste. The families of the 1940s didn't survive because they had the best gear. They survived because they understood how to manipulate their environment with what they had. If you found this look into historical survival logistics valuable, please share this video with someone who appreciates the grit of the greatest generation. Don't forget to subscribe to Atten Recounts for more deep dives into the forgotten technology that shaped our world.